The Akamba of Kenya, the Akamba people, seems to have had some very interesting remnants of religious beliefs that some people have traced back to Middle East, specifically C.W. Hobley, the person whose book I'm reading, and others who he quotes in the book. C.W. Hobley, of course, was a colonial administrator, came to Kenya in 1890, stayed around for close to 30 years. He became a district commissioner, provincial commissioner, wrote several books about the Kenyan people, the Kikuyu, the Akamba, and history of what became Kenya, of course, later on. And in this book, The Bantu Beliefs and Magic, he shares very interesting information about the belief system of the Akamba and the belief system of the Kikuyu. Of course, he was a British, so we need to understand his content within the right context. He was a colonialist, but they did collect very interesting stuff about the different peoples of Kenya and wrote several books. I've read 3 of his books. We are going to read parts where he tells us about this very interesting, we can say, remnants, as he views it, of belief system that came from the Middle East that was among the Akamba. Now, the first part I'm going to read is going to tell us about the concept of genie. Now, this is a concept that is mostly found, of course, among the Semitic, we could say, groups of people. And he says that concept, while it wasn't very common in the peoples of Eastern Africa, it seems to have had, or some people seems to have had remnants of something that we could be say that possibly those ideas used to exist. And Hobley is talking about the Akamba here, that there is a story that used to be told by the Akamba that potentially proved that the Akamba also did have those beliefs. He also tells us something about the creation story of the Akamba that matches somehow with the creation story of the Bible. It's a small part, but a very interesting part. And he also tells us about the concept of spirits among the Akamba and how that concept of spirit among the Akamba matches in very interesting way, or very, we could say, perplexing way, with the concept of the spirit among the Assyrians, the ancient Assyrians. Now, let's start with that, with the story of the ancient Assyrians. He says, ancestral spirits, the belief in the vitality of the ancestral spirit is very strong among the Kikuyu and the Kamba peoples. The former called them Ngoma and the latter Aimu, singular Imu. The Akamba declare that the life breath Ngo becomes Imu. Curiously enough, the disembodied spirit was called Edimu by the ancient Assyrians, according to R.C. Thompson in Semitic Magic. And they also believed that the soul could return to earth and that ghosts were responsible for many body ills. Those are the Assyrians. And the Akamba believed exactly the same. Now he goes on to say, under ordinary circumstances, when a person died and was duly buried, his soul entered the underworld, the house of darkness, the seat of the god Irkala, the house from which none come forth again. I think this is about the Assyrians. This will seem to correspond to the Sheol of the Hebrews. So that concept of Irkala and the Sheol among the Hebrews and then Irkala among the Assyrians is a concept of the spirit going underground. The Akamba used to believe the same. The Assyrian word idimu, the root of which is imu, is practically identical with the Kamba word for the same conception, but there is no evidence to show that the identity is anything but accidental. So, is that accidental that the Akamba call the spirit the same name that the ancient Assyrians called it? He says possibly accidental. Let's come to the creation and how the Akamba explained creation in a way that also, in a perplexing way, sort of matches with the biblical explanation or description of the creation. He says, according to Reverend Hoffman, since this is a referent who stayed among the Akamba for some time, there is a saying that the bird was created on the 5th day and the Imundu Mwei on the 6th day. Now, of course, the Bible does not talk about the creation of the bird, it talks about the animals and then the human on the 6th day. No further explanation of this curious saying is given. The ordinary meaning of Mundu Mwei is man of power or wisdom. It is used of the medicine man, but in the saying above quoted, it probably refers to mankind genetically as opposed to other animals. I don't know whether it was meant to be genetically or generally. I think that was supposed to be generally. Now let's come to this story that probably or likely gives us a glimpse into the possibility that the Akamba at some point did believe in the concept of genie, but not the modern genie the way people understand it today. He writes, among our African tribes, this cult, however, has fortunately not developed to any great extent. He's explaining about the concept of the genie. It may, of course, have been forgotten or it may have disappeared, but there are still a few traces of it left. AKAMBA story, for instance, tells of two girls who took shelter in a cave during a storm. A centipede came in while they were there and the girls threw it outside. But the centipede was an evil spirit, revenged itself by closing up the entrance to the cave so that the girls were starved to death. This story might have come straight from the Central Arabia and be that of Jinn and the Sedim of the Talmud, who was supposed to assume any form they wished. So he says this story told by the Akamba, it could so easily be taken to have come from Middle East, probably the genie concept, or the Sedim, which is from the Talmud of the Hebrews. So yeah, so those are the parts very early on. This is basically the introduction by C.W. Hobley himself, and also the first chapter of the book, Bantu Beliefs and Magic. Now, you can get this book, read it. It's a very interesting book. As I said, it's a book, of course, you read in the right context, understanding that it was written by a colonialist, a colonizer, in fact. But we can't dismiss it so easily because of that, because the book basically adds to your knowledge on how the British managed to break down the existing old civilizations and constitutions. In fact, Hobley uses the word constitution, which I find to be very interesting, how they managed to break down those constitutions, the old constitutions, and replace them with of course, the British authority. Very interesting. You can find the book on Amazon, or you can find the book on Nuria. You can check the description box, the pinned comment, or the bio if you are watching on TikTok, and you can find a link to where you can get a copy for yourself. Those are my random thoughts.